Good morning, dear friends. I think you have been welcomed by many people many a times to India by now, but let me again welcome you in India. So I feel very privileged to be in the midst of some of the most engaged journalists from all across the world. So let me begin with the story of a journalist who discovered the secret of Nobel Prize. One day, a journalist was driving in countryside, and he noticed that there was a man standing in an open field under the sky, and the sun was very hot. That made journalist curious, and he stopped his car and went back and waited for this man to do something. He didn't do anything. He was not even moving. So he asked to this man, went close and asked, that, "Sir, may I know what are you doing in this sun and heat?" He said, "Just don't disturb me." After 10 minutes, the journalist was curious and again went to him and asked, "Sir, could you please tell me what are you doing here?" And the man replied that, "I am struggling for a Nobel Prize." So the journalist was surprised and he asked that, "How come?" Because the man was looking like a farmer. He said, "Sir, how are you doing so?" He said that, "I read in my childhood that those who are out standing in their field, they can win the Nobel Prize. So I'm standing out in my field for the whole day." But let me also tell another secret of mine that I was passionate about the issue of children since my childhood. But I didn't know how to make interventions to make their lives better. Because not only in India, but globally, there was no civil society effort to free children from slavery because people thought that slavery has been abolished. So the general perception was that these children are poor children and they are just helping the family. Nothing is uncommon in it. So India did not have any law against child labor, and most countries didn't have clear laws. Then even the international organization like ILO or UNICEF, they did not have any program on child labor or child slavery. So I started, in fact, I was an engineer by education and profession, but I gave up my career in 1980 and started with a magazine. I was publishing a journal, though I was not trained as a journalist, as many of you are. But I thought that this is the best way to educate and sensitize the masses against slavery of children. So I started this fortnightly called Struggle Shall Continue. One day, a desperate father knocked my door, whose daughter was about to be sold to a brothel. And when I let him in and started interviewing, I was shocked to learn that 17 years ago, he and his newly married wife and a few more families were trafficked from his native village in Uttar Pradesh. Some of you are Indians who may know Aligarh district, to work at a brick kiln in Punjab, Sirhind. So during those 17 years, there was no freedom. They were not allowed to leave the place. They were forced to work day in and day out. Children were born and grew up, including this 15-year-old girl, Sabo. And the man was crying and just holding my feet and again saying, please save my Sabo, save my daughter. He told the story that 3-4 days ago, some unknown people came to the brick kiln and started making a deal for his daughter, but somehow it was not materialized because the employer was asking more money from these brothel agents. So when the parents heard this, you can imagine the pain of the father who jumped into a brick-loaded truck without knowing where the truck was going, and truck landed up in Chandigarh, which is the capital town of the state of Punjab. So he was knocking doors and doors. Somehow he came across a person, by chance, he was the subscriber of my magazine. And he gave an old copy and said that you go to Kailash, this man writes about people like you, issues like yours. So keeping that copy, he ran all the way, no food, no water, in a very bad shape. He came to my place. And when I was writing his story as a journalist, I gave up my pencil and paper, and I started thinking that if Sabo was my daughter, what would I do? I can do my duty as journalist by writing this story. But if I am a father, what would I do? If I am a brother, what would I do? I'm not just going to write and wait. I will hold the whole world upside down and do whatever I could do. So I told this man, Wasal Khan, that I'm not going to write anymore. I'll go with you to rescue your daughter. He said, no, sir, these people are mafia. But somehow I convinced him. I convinced a couple of my friends. I managed some money. And we went there, hired a truck and a car. These people were prepared. They attacked us. They took out the camera and thrown. I kept the cameraman with me for the evidences. So we came empty hands, and Wasal Khan was caught and beaten up in front of us very badly. I came back empty hands, barefooted. But I did not come with empty heart. I had no idea how to do, so I went to some of my lawyer friends, and they advised to go to the court and help in some way. So they used the old British law, habeas corpus, and the court has admitted it. And dear sisters and brothers, in a week time, we were able to liberate Sabo, her family, and 36 altogether children, women, and men. So that was the point when I first experienced freedom. And when I was bringing them back from the court to my office, I felt that writing and talking about liberty, freedom, mukti, moksha, those great values and words, or value-loaded words, is good. But realization of that is something different. So that was the moment when a journalist turned into an activist. And I decided that I have to, if I come to know, I have to free others. So I started getting informations one after other, not just to publish in my magazine, but to help them in freeing. And since then, my organization in India and I never looked back, and we have been able to physically rescue more than 85,000 children. There is a great mantra, as they say, the most ancient book of wisdom and knowledge, Vedas. And this is very much applicable to this congregation here. It says, Agne Naya Supatha Raye, means those who are well versed with knowledge, who have the power of knowledge and information, they are like fire. And that fire must be used to show the path to the whole world and lead the society to the path of positivity and the path of well-being of entire humanity. So I feel so honored and privileged to be amongst you. Each one of you is a source of fire. What you write, what you speak, what you can do can definitely enlighten the world. And what I learned in my early age of being a journalist, that we have tremendous moral responsibility and obligation to the humanity. What we have gained is not just to lead our life as journalists, as career, but to give back to the society, to enlighten it in a truthful manner, to make the world better and peaceful and beautiful. Many things are happening around us. A couple of weeks ago, when we see a picture of 12-year-old boy made suicidal bomber in Turkey. He was blasted alive for the purpose and dubious designs of someone else. We have to look at the mirror. We talk of growth, development, civilization, globalization. When you see the picture of a girl, 12-year-old girl, snatched away from mother's lap, sold for prostitution with a lesser price than a cigarette pack. And when she was not able to perform her customers in Syria, she was buried alive in a pre-prepared grave. Whose son was he, 12-year-old? Whose daughter is she? The boys are given guns in their hands. If they are not able to push the trigger and kill the so-called suspected traitors of ISIS, they are buried alive in the graves prepared. Whose sons are they? Last year, I was talking to a mother in Pakistan, and she told me she was the mother of the victim of the assassination of 140 odd children in a school in Pakistan, Peshawar. So this mother from Peshawar asked me, she said that, Bhai, brother, I sent my son this morning, he was a little late, so I scolded him and gave him his school bag and a water bottle and forced him to run to school. and I received my son in coffin. She was crying and asked what was his fault. The boy was gunned down, but the water bottle was still intact. And she was crying, why not the bullet has gone to the water bottle and why on the chest of my son? Whose children are they? I'm not talking only on humanitarian imperative. This is the big question mark to the whole world. That if we are not able to protect our children, how can we protect our future? I always say that the state of children in any society, any country, anywhere in the world is the true reflection of our past, our present, and our future. We made wrongs in our history. That's why millions of children are sold and bought like animals, enslaved, prostituted. This is the fault of our present. And if we allow it to continue, then you can imagine what kind of world we are shaping. Our parents, our societies, our nations have given us something, so we are here. Something. What are we going to return back to the next generation? If we are not going to act now, as politicians, as business houses, as social workers, as media persons, then we are going to create and allow the creation of a much more dangerous world for our generations to come. This is a big challenge. On the other hand, if we can protect one generation, if we invest on this generation, I don't believe those who say that children are our future. I am of strong opinion that children are our present. They are the present. If we are going to invest on this present, then the generations to come will take care of themselves. You need not to worry. Perhaps you don't need so many social workers. You don't need so many budgetary allocations. Perhaps you don't need so many preachers and gurus. If one generation is properly protected, well-nourished, well-educated, healthy, free, so invest in one generation. That is a big challenge. Dear friends, all the situation is not so grim. Humanity has made very remarkable progress. "15 years ago, the number of child laborers in the world was 260 million. Now the number has gone down to 168 million. Almost 100 million children have been saved, many more because that graph was growing up and now it has steeped down. We had made remarkable progress in the eradication of child labor. We had made remarkable progress in lowering the number of out-of-school children. The primary age school children's number 15 years ago was 130 million. And now we have 60 million children up to the age of 14 out of school. We made progress. Infant mortality rate, for example, has been lowered to less than half. In many countries, we have been able to control polio. In many countries, malaria, not everywhere, but we did. And that was possible due to the awareness which many of you have created. That was possible due to political will, where many of you might be active. It was possible due to sensitization of corporate sector, where the corporations also started feeling that we need educated, skilled workforce, and that's why we have to invest more on education instead of using the children in slavery. As consumers also, media has to be credited for creating tremendous amount of consumer power and consumer sensitivity to question the big brands and the supply chain not using child labor and child slaves and trafficked children. The laws have been enacted and in many countries enforced. Of course, there's a mixed situation. The international spending on education in ODA spending has grown, not remarkably, but definitely gradually growing. Similarly, the budgetary allocations for education and child protection in a number of countries, also in South Asia and Southeast Asia, has grown. So the combination of all these factors had helped our children. But dear friends, when I say that 168 million children in the world are child laborers, half of them are in Asia Pacific, 78 million. Of course, majority of them are in South Asia and Southeast Asia as well. Half of these children, 78 children, are working in extremely hazardous conditions or child slavery, child trafficking. What we call in technical language, worst forms of child labor. 120 million children are dropped out from schools in in Asia Pacific countries. Basically in South Asia and some parts of Southeast Asia. It's very unfortunate that South Asia and Southeast Asia are among the biggest hub of child trafficking. Isn't it shameful that we are conquering Mars? We are able to take very close-up photos of Plato. We are so well connected with each other. What a disconnect. That every year, every day, the number of children sold for forced labor and prostitution is increasing. Only some years ago, about $50 billion were earned as illicit money every year on human trafficking. And today, the recent reports claim that it has gone up to $150 billion. $150 billion. So that illicit earning cannot be possible without the connivance of local authorities and sometimes without police, money launderers. All the black money is generated and used by these people, small proportion of it. We are, Asia, are the biggest hub of child trafficking. Intra-country and inter-border trafficking both. We are the transit. We are the destination. Most of our countries are destination of trafficked children. Most of our countries are source areas of child trafficking, and most of our countries in Asia are transit to other countries of child trafficking. And how could it be possible without the negligence or connivance of local authorities? These are vital challenges to everyone. If so much black money, illegal money, criminal money is generated, then we cannot create a safer and peaceful Asia and peaceful world. So that is our collective responsibility. Only last fortnight, my Indian organization, Bachpan Bachao Andolan, and we have freed a group of children from Delhi. Most of them were trafficked and slave children, bonded children. I was sitting with that group in our ashram called Mukti Ashram in outskirts of Delhi. One boy was looking very stone-faced, no emotion on him. And I started counseling him slowly. And then after a while, he started speaking. He said that, "Sir, I wanted to cry, but I will not cry." He said, "I wanted to go back to my mother's. I was not allowed to cry for 4 years. Because my master could have beaten me, punished me, branded me if I cry for my mother. So even in the nights, I miss her most, but I was afraid to cry." Another boy was listening to this story. And I asked him that, "My son, you come from Guwahati," because his home address was written somewhere in Guwahati. So I said, "I'm going to take back you to Guwahati. My people will restore you with your parents." And then helplessly, he said, "No, sir, I can never meet my parents." I said, "No, are they not alive?" He said, "I don't know, but I can never meet." Then I just provoked him to tell the truth. He said, "Sir, I'm from Bangladesh. But I was frightened to say to anyone that if I say that I am a Bangladeshi illegal immigrant who was trafficked from Bangladesh to India, then the police will arrest me and I will spend whole my life in jail." He is about 16 years, Salim. This is the change name. Salim said that when he was 7 or 8, he was taken by someone to Guwahati and from there to Delhi. And that boy became drug addict. So that was another problem. I immediately talked to my colleagues and they contacted the embassy here. He had no clue, nothing except some knowledge about the Chittagong Hills and some geographical description. So thanks to Bangladeshi High Commission here, who had helped to locate the exact location. And only 4 days ago, I was sitting with this boy again, and we have been able to contact his mother 8 years after. And the boy could not speak anything, you can imagine. After 8 years, he was talking to his mother. And the mother was crying only. She could not speak one sentence properly. This is trafficking. Some years ago, when I rescued a group of Nepalese girls who were enslaved in circuses in India, and one of the circuses is like mafia. My colleagues, I and my son, who is a lawyer, all of us went to rescue that group, and we were badly beaten up and lying in the pool of blood on the street, and the bypassers. Luckily, a journalist from Al-Qaeda, what is this? Al Jazeera, yeah. If Al-Qaeda people could have helped me, I would love to, to help freeing children. Then many of the problems would be solved in some part of the world. But Al Jazeera, so Al Jazeera people took us to hospital, and finally these girls were freed, 12 girls. And one of the girls, who had been raped and molested several times, 14, 15-year-old girl, she did not want to see a man. She knew, though, that a man has rescued them, but she was so shy, but rather she was hating man. So somehow I was sitting close to the whole group. Everybody was just kissing or touching my feet or hugging me, all the girls, and their mothers and fathers. But this girl was sitting at a distance. I was talking to them that now we are going to take you to Nepal and you will go to school. And suddenly I saw that this girl, Bhavna, this is changed name, she came close to me and she was angrily put her hand on my shoulder. She lost her father when she was a child. So somehow she built some trust in me. And she said, "How can you say that we can go to school?" I said, "Yes, my daughter, you will go to school." She said, "No, I am no more a child. None of us is a child." A 14-year-old girl, trafficked girl, enslaved girl asks and says, "I am no more a child. How could I go to school?" I have to think twice that what civilizations we are living in. I assured her, I hugged her, kissed her, and I said that, "My daughter, you will definitely go to school." And my friends, I tell you that now, after 5, 6 years, after her rescue, she is doing her nursing course in Nepal. So little intervention is needed. We can do it, dear friends, in our own way, in our own capacity. The same question was asked by a Cambodian girl who has been sold by her own relatives, by uncle, to work as domestic help. And then from domestic help, she was sold to work at a massage parlor and doing prostitution, forced to do prostitution. And when we rescued her in Cambodia, she said, "I did not want to go back home to my village because I have been raped several times and I am no more a child. It is too late for me to think as a child." In Philippines, we have rescued a group of children who were working as domestic help with my local organization. And when I was sitting with a group of the girls in a place called Bisayan, is a state, and these girls said that, "No, sir, it is too late. Our childhood cannot be restored." Dear friends, this is the saga of millions of our daughters and sons who were forced to think that they are no more children. We have to act now. The good news is that it is for the first time in the development narrative. The United Nations last year had accommodated all major child-related issues in the Sustainable Development Goals. We have been demanding that without eradication of child labor, we cannot achieve most of the goals. During the MDG debate in 1999 and 2000. But people did not listen. My argument was that there was a triangular relationship between child labor, illiteracy, and poverty. If you allow one of them to continue, others will fall. This will continue. It makes a vicious circle. Globally, 168 million child laborers, 200 adults are jobless. Jobless adults are none but the very parents of these children. There are many studies which reveal. 60 million primary school age children are not in school. Another 200 million children are dropped out from senior primary and secondary schooling. So if you see the number, that makes a correlation between all of them. We challenged it during MDG debate. Now in SDGs, we have very clear language. Goal number 4 is not just talking about education for all, but inclusive, quality, and equitable education for all children. That's a great leap in that direction. We have very clear goal 8.7, which calls for total eradication of child labor by 2030, the SDG goalpost, and eradication of slavery, trafficking. Goal number 16.2 is very clear and specific towards protecting all children from violence. So we have very strong proposition in the development discourse, and we have to keep it in mind. I have been meeting many presidents and many prime ministers and UN leaders across the world and trying to just remind them that there are 17 goals and they are so big, so many things are there. So I'm afraid that the child-related sub-goals and goals should not be missed out. They should be prioritized. And there is a need of more coordinated approach to link with these issues. We cannot solve the problem of children in isolation. We cannot also solve the problems of children and protect the rights of children in compartments and fragmented approach, which we see now, unfortunately. There are so many ministries, so many departments who are dealing with different aspects of children in each country. There are so many UN agencies who are dealing with different aspects of one child. We need more concerted and coordinated approach in dealing with child rights. We need to invest in education. $22 billion are needed to ensure primary education for children, additional money required every year. And now the Sustainable Development Goal is not just to ensure primary education, it also asks to complete secondary education. So altogether, $39 billion are needed to ensure primary and secondary education. This is not a paramount money. This is not a huge task. $22 billion are nothing but just 4.5 days of global military expenditure, annual military expenditure. We spend more than $1 trillion. And if the whole world decides that we are not going to fight for 4.5 days, we are not going to spend on anything for defense, so-called defense, then we can protect all our children and bring them to school. It's the question of priorities. It's the question of globalization of our compassion, globalization of our responsibility towards each other to make a safer world. We can do it. Education is key to development. Education is the first step towards justice and equality in society, equity in society. May it be the gender equity, may it be social justice, it begins with alphabet, it begins with education. When a child enters in a classroom and the door of a school opens for a child, then millions of doors of opportunities, not in the life of that child, but the life of society open. So investment in education is the key for sustainable development, for sustainable societies. We have to prioritize it. Dear friends, I would appeal you. You have so many beats and so many units and departments in your newspapers and your media houses. Not necessarily that each one of you is appointed for the child-related issues or development or human rights-related issues. But as a human being, as a father, as a grandfather, as a sister, as a brother, you can play some role to protect our children, because they are all our children. Your power, as I said, your power of pen, your power of your computer, your power of your compassion will matter to make this world a safer and better place. I would once again thank you with a very funny thing. I started with a funny thing, but when I was invited on the dais to receive the Nobel Prize, I started delivering my acceptance speech, and I lost my papers. So everybody was very nervous, you can imagine. It never happened in the history of over 100 years that a recipient has lost the speaking notes or speech. So I smiled and I said to the people who were watching there, but as well as in the world, and I said that I am happy to speak without notes, and it reminds me a story which I read in my childhood. There was a heavy fire broken out in jungle. Everyone was rushing for a safer place, leaving the jungle, including King Lion. A lion noticed a tiny hummingbird rushing straight towards the flames, to the fire. He was shocked and he shouted, "What are you doing? You are going to commit suicide." She said, "No, sir, I am going to extinguish this fire." He said, "How come?" The bird replied, "Sir, look at my beak. I am carrying a drop of water. I am doing my bit." Dear friends, this was my philosophy of my life, and I look for each one of you. I am here to call your hummingbird inside you. You are much more powerful than the hummingbird. Take her out, use it to make this world a better place for our children. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, Kailash has a little time, so I think he'll take a question or two. Why don't we, yes, here and then here. Here?
Satyarthi wants to meet our DJ students. तो एक बच्चे को लगा दो backstage पे लेके आएंगे.
Here we go. Here we go.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. That was, I think, wonderful description of your journey and how we all should actually, the hummingbird, we should arouse this hummingbird inside us. I think that was really wonderful, and I've been following your work because I'm an independent journalist. My name is Bidhayak Das, based in Myanmar currently. And I have had the opportunity of helping people who were doing anti-trafficking work back in Shillong, where I was born. And I've lived in the Northeast. And currently in Myanmar, where I work very closely with the Rohingya community over there, and I see a lot of the people of that community really migrating out and their children's not coming back. You've given us examples of how the situation has changed. There are good examples, things are happening, but from my personal involvement and from what you've described, I feel the picture is a little dismal overall. If you look at the bigger landscape, we feel the picture is a little dismal in terms of at least the numbers are growing up in terms of child labor, children who are being trafficked, their situations, the repatriation and the rehabilitation is not really working out properly. There are no proper trauma counselings really happening, at least by and large. But at the same time, we know that there are international mechanisms in place that have been working, that have been trying to put pressure in these countries. The United States has the tier system, the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. All these systems are in place. But we still feel that something is not working somewhere, and I feel that personally. Would you please tell us what is this thing that is really not working in terms of really arresting this problem and trying to really find a solution? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I disagree that we live in a world of despair only. I believe in hope, I believe in possibilities, and I strongly believe that the solution of every problem lies in the womb of the problem itself. If we are committed, if we are clear, if we are determined, if we are strategic, we can solve any problem, including this one. As I said that 36 years ago when I gave up my career as an engineer, it was a non-issue. Everybody laughed at me. But now we see, and I quoted you a number which has gone down in the last 15 years from 260 million to 168 million child laborers in the world. So the progress is being made. The problem lies, it's a kind of 2 or 3-fold problem or deficits. One is the social deficit, where a lot of work has to be done in awareness building, consciousness raising among the communities and societies. So the demand should come from the people that there's something wrong and we wanted to change it, which is still lacking. So a lot of, I would say, the moral responsibility lies in the media and journalists and civil society organizations and so on. We cannot simply depend on the governments to do it. So it is a collective responsibility. The second thing is the political deficit. So children do not acquire the priorities normally, and the children who are marginalized, neither they nor their parents are going to affect the political equations in any country. Except their parents are being used as voters, they are not really considered as dignified human beings with constitutional rights. So children are neither voter nor they are able to influence politics in any manner. So they are a kind of left out. So political deficit or lack of political will again has to be addressed by the social movements or social mobilization as well as the media's effort, where the politicians are held accountable. Technology can play an important role, and I'm quite confident about the power of social media and the internet and technology. We are in much better situation to track the children, track the traffickers. We can do simple measures by way of biometric systems, by introducing simple things like camera surveillance at railway stations and bus stops and places like that. The only thing is that we have to bring those issues before the state and the technology both, so that we can make use of it. Then the budgetary allocations is also a big question. We know that the unemployment and economic crisis and situations and aftermath impact the social spending of many countries. So in this situation, we have to look for more innovative ways, and this is a good way and reason to engage the private sector, the corporate sector, where they should also realize their social responsibility, not as the CSR, but also it's much more moral and social responsibility towards the children. So how they can make sure that in their supply chain there is no child labor involved or trafficked children are involved. But again, there is a role of vigilant society and vigilant media, sometimes to expose these kind of things, but also to highlight and encourage the good practices or successful interventions of governments or corporates or civil society. So I'm sure that we can achieve it. It is achievable.
Hello, sir. I'm Manis Joshi. I work for Network 18 in Bombay. So my question is a broader one. In our country, we see many horrible things happening, and which might compel us to sometimes think that whether children's rights and human rights are a luxury, to say the least. And perhaps we as Indians have found a comfortable way of conveniently compartmentalizing our thoughts in order to go peacefully ahead with our lives. My question to you is, how does one train oneself as a journalist, as an Indian, and as a citizen to go about solving these problems and make a perceptible change without getting overwhelmed by the enormity of it all?
what I learned actually, that one can have big goals, big objectives to achieve, but every small success is also a reason to celebrate. Those who just wait for the goal to come, the super objective to achieve, perhaps it comes once in a while in the lifetime, or in many cases never come. But any small thing could be, or a small achievement or success could be used to go to next step. Second thing is that sometimes we keep ourselves distant, considering that the situation is so complicated and the odds are so powerful, perhaps I cannot play an important role. But you are a young man, so I can tell one thing, that those who clap or criticize sitting on the fences, they are not the one who are going to write the history. History is written only by them who jump inside the ring without worrying whether they would be successful or they will fail. And you should jump in the ring. Do something. And I sometimes also tell to my young friends that let us practice a 3D formula or mantra. First D is dream, as you said. Dream big and dream for better. Don't dream for yourself only. Dream for your nation, dream for your world, for whole humanity. So dream is the beginning. And then the second thing is discover. Discover the power inside you. Each one has tremendous divine power, I tell. You need not to go to temples and mosques. If you go, it's good. But you can find the power inside you, try to discover it. And discover the opportunities outside. Not just the challenges, but also opportunities which are around you. They could be hidden somewhere behind the obstacles, but opportunities are there. And the third D is, which is much more important, and that is do. Act. Do it now. Do something good or bad, but do. Thank you.
Yes, please. Then we'll take two, okay?
Okay.
This one and then that one.
Thank you very much for that very inspiring lecture that you gave. I'm a journalist from Pakistan. My name is Kamal Siddiqui. First of all, thank you for remembering the children of Peshawar. We will never forget them for a very long time to come. Now, having said that, as a journalist, my question to you is that you recall that you started a magazine, and after that you went into activism because you thought that the magazine could not achieve. Now, you also talked about how journalists should jump in. So my question as a journalist is, when should we stop journalism and when should we start activism? And is that okay for a journalist to do? And if it's not, what is the time when a journalist should realize that this is not working out, he has to do something else? Thank you.
Good question. Actually, 3 decades ago or 36 years ago, we did not have enough means and tools like technology, social media, internet facilities, and things like that. So I had to choose one or other way. I cannot continue as journalist, and I had to act. But that was also a kind of more moral response to that situation of Wasal Khan and Sabo. Nowadays, you need not to leave the journalism, but you can use journalism for the betterment of society, because you have much more powerful tool in your hand than 35 years, 36 years ago. And in my case, actually, I was not working in a mainstream media, but I was publishing my own magazine, which was, so I was the publisher, I was the editor, I was the writer, I was the reporter, I was the proofreader, and I was the photographer for most of the time. And I was doing everything, what we call the Peer Babarchi Bhisti in a language here in South Asia. So it was difficult. But if somebody is working in a media house, that becomes much more easier. Of course, it is difficult because media houses are also controlled by some business houses and corporate. But you have some space to do it, actually. And you can also write freely as in some newspapers and magazines, even using the nickname or some sort of different name. So there are so many ways to do it. Investigation could be done much more easily now than ever before. So the technology and the opportunities are bigger than 3 decades ago. So you need not to leave, but use journalism to protect children in Pakistan.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I ask just simple questions for you. Yeah, thank you very much for your lecture. Mary Jimmy from South Sudan in Africa continent. You talk about the child labor or the child rights, but some other time, like back in other country, it's not own making by child or by parent for child to become a child labor. It happened in a situation where there's a conflict, like back in my country there. People are staying in IDP camps, in UN protection camps. And in such situation, the foreign, they are not allowed to come out from UN protected camps. Only the children who can go to the market and buy some item, they bring, they go and fetch some water from outside, they bring. In such situation, as activists, how will you report? You report as a child labor, or do you have another mechanism for reporting such issues? Thank you.
Well, the children in poor families, or even in little better off families, help their parents or learn something, or sometimes supplement the income of their families in their free time. But in many cases, it is opposite. These children are exploited as child laborers. They do not go to school. There is no health, safety. There is no moral and psychological protection. And they are economically exploited also. So in such cases, I think we have to find a clear line that if the child is going to school and attending school full time, having some leisure time, there is no obstacle on her freedom and development and well-being, and helping family along with the parents for an hour or sometimes in holidays or so. That is permissible, and that is not also against any law. But under the garb of family child labor, if the children are exploited by the relatives or distant relatives, and even sometimes by the parents themselves, I come across many examples where the fathers are drunkards and they spend money on drinking and liquor or gambling and other things, and their children are mortgaged as bonded laborers or slave laborers. That is unacceptable. So we have to take care of that part. And we have to also realize, actually, these problems should not be seen and solved in isolation. We live in a much more globalized world, and that globalization does not mean the globalization of products which you and I are using. It is not the globalization of knowledge which is available on my fingertips now on my mobile phone. We have to see that the problems and solutions in the world are so interconnected as they were never been before. May it be global warming, may it be global terrorism, may it be global recession, anything you talk. This is so interconnected. So we have to look for more globalized solution to all these problems, and it is the responsibility of all countries, not just the localized place or a country which is having that problem. And the whole issue has to be looked like that. So I have been calling that we are very good at globalization of economies and markets and knowledge. This is the time to globalize human compassion. Thank you.